This is Join Us in France, episode 307. Bonjour, I'm Annie Sargent, and today I bring you a conversation with Elyse about the Netflix series Emily in Paris. Elyse and I watched it together and we took some notes on our immediate reactions. I must confess that we only watched 2 episodes and we still managed to talk about it longer than a normal episode. Lots to say about the show for sure. Stay tuned. Let's see if you agree with us. Thank you, patrons, for giving me a precious gift, the time to produce this podcast. Your monthly gift makes it all possible, and in these times of great uncertainty and anxiety, growing anxiety, I might add, I can't tell you how much it means to me. A shout out to new patrons and more info on how to join all my wonderful patrons after the interview. Check out my audio self-guided tours on joinusinfrance.com/audio tours. As I record this, I have 4 of them for Paris, and I will release more as time goes by because I love voice map tours. I think they give you great freedom and great depth. Show notes for this episode are on joinusinfrance.com/307, the numeral 307, where you can see a recap of what we've discussed. Follow Addicted to France on Instagram to see photos of the gorgeous areas of Paris where Emily in Paris takes us. I'll post them this week. The best way to stay in touch with me and with the podcast is to sign up for the newsletter at joinusinfrance.com/newsletter. Bonjour, Elyse.
Bonjour, Annie.
We're recording al fresco again.
Yes, it's nice. It's nice. It's nice. We've had a nice 2 days of sun after a bunch of days of gray and chilly, and it's going to get chilly again.
I know, but it's lovely. It's the beginning of October in Toulouse, and we've had really several days of rain and gray.
Yeah.
And now it's fantastic.
This
again.
is the best. This is
my
the best.
hibiscus is flowering.
It is beautiful.
Yeah, I don't understand. It didn't flower most of the summer. It's flowered in the spring, then it stopped in the summer, and now it's flowering again.
Well, my dahlia is about to open up with flowers, so I think that no, even the plants don't know what season it is anymore. You know, it's like, okay.
Anyway, since we're outside, you might hear birds and whatever, but that's okay. Nobody dies. Today we're together to talk about this beautiful, a little bit grating, very entertaining show called Emily in Paris,
Which I didn't know about until a few days ago.
Right. So she was over to record another episode, and I showed her a couple episodes. We sat through a couple of episodes together, and it was interesting because she hadn't seen it. But it was my second time seeing those same 2 episodes. So I picked up a lot of things that I hadn't paid attention to the first time. And the first thing I want to talk about is why is this getting so much attention? Because there are dozens of articles by like big names, like, you know, BBC.
BBC. I read them in the article this morning and BBC. You know, a New Yorker magazine has their online site is called Vulture. Mm-hmm. Why Vulture, I don't know, but it's called Realtor. And there's a huge, long article analyzing the show. I'm like, really? You know? Okay.
Yeah. And I decided to do an episode because somebody in the Facebook group, because I posted something after I watched it the first time, because I had seen mentions of it over time, but it hasn't been out that long.
It hasn't been out very long, no.
Right. But I had seen mentions of it, and so I decided I'm going to try it, and I posted something on the Join Us in France closed group on Facebook. I said I watched the first episode of Emily in Paris last night. I found it somewhat entertaining, beautiful shooting, good actors, but holy stereotypes. This is definitely not a documentary. And then a bunch of people, like 150 people, commented.
150.
And a bunch of people had lots of interesting things to say about it. So I want to go through some of that. Now, why did I think that it was full of stereotypes? Let me tell you. The first one I got was when the American boss, who ends up not going to Paris, says that French men prefer older women.
That's right. That's even before she leaves, right? That's even before she leaves Chicago.
I was like, oh, okay. Well, now we know.
Well, I think that in itself, it's interesting. The things that you ticked on and the things that I ticked on weren't necessarily the same.
Different, yeah.
But obviously, that on some level is a reference to President Macron. Because
true.
That's why. Because I think that it's in a way of showing that it's very topical, that it's very, very now as a show.
Yeah.
Whereas I don't think, honestly, in the long, long list of stereotypes about the French and sex and things like that, I don't think that is really one of them. I
but
really
it's
don't.
A new one now.
It's a new one.
It's a new one.
It's a new one to add to the list. That's all. Yeah.
And then in this show, they use songs in French, which
Yes.
is nice, but I had never heard any of them. So I don't know where they got them. Maybe they got them written just for the show? Or?
I don't think so. I think it's some French pop, but again,
I don't know. Yeah.
There's a little bit of French popular music that I have listened to. Not that I would know who was singing most of the time.
Yeah.
But I didn't know those songs either.
Yeah. Then she walks into her apartment in Paris, and the concierge gives her the evil eye. Well, of course, she walks in and doesn't say bonjour, which is a major faux pas.
Which you all know out there by now, right?
You all know about that if you listen to us. So that's a real thing. But she looks up and down like, what is this? But she does say hi.
She says hi.
She says hi, but she doesn't say bonjour. So,
Well, she says hi
Not good enough.
because, like many young, unfortunately, self-centered young Americans from a privileged background, she assumes, and now this might be true of people from other countries, but I wouldn't know really in that case, but she really does assume, and that I know this for a fact by some of the students that I've actually worked with and taught, she will just assume that everyone does know some English, and therefore she doesn't have to worry about whether she speaks any French or not.
Right.
That's something else.
And right. And a concierge probably would not.
Would not.
Imagine if I walked into a building in New York City and there's a doorman and I talk French to them. Would they know French?
Most likely,
No.
they would answer you in Spanish. No, they would not.
Yeah,
they just
exactly,
would not.
exactly.
But I think that's the whole question of being presumptuous about that. You know, I think that's a lot of what the thing is that is annoying. You know, This is kind of youth. Okay, you know, you and I are past that youth stage.
Yeah.
But still, just being young doesn't make it excusable.
Somehow. Yeah. And then there's the fifth floor, fourth floor thing.
Oh, yes.
That comes back a couple of times in the first episode. But of course, in France,
it is true.
Yeah, it's true that rez-de-chaussé is the ground level, and we don't call the ground level the first floor. It's the rez-de-chaussé. It's ground level. And then what's above ground level is the first floor. So after that, everything is offset by one.
Now, that reminds me of something else that has nothing to do with the show, but it is a fact that in France, when you want to use numbers to indicate what is the best and what is the worst, it is often the reverse of the way it's done in English.
What do you mean?
For instance, I have had the experience, this is in my teaching experiences in France, of having the number 3 be the best of 1, 2, and 3, instead of 1 being the best.
Oh, I see.
So, you know, there's this, it's very interesting. It's like the whole concept of how you count is even different.
Yeah. Then the other thing I noticed is that when the realtor opens the apartment for her, he gives her he walks her all the way up there, and I'm not sure anybody would have done that, but okay. She's pretty, so that might be why. He hits on her and gives her his phone number because, but she says, I have a boyfriend. And he says, well, you have a boyfriend in America. That doesn't count. You need a French boyfriend.
Right.
That's a stereotype about French people. French people don't do that. Maybe a few do.
You know what? I think that there's the whole thing about how it's like everything from the beginning to the end is about French men being obsessed by sex.
Right.
Basically, everybody she meets, and pretty much like that, And I don't know how far back that stereotype goes. That would be interesting to find out. I really don't.
Mm-hmm.
But I know that years ago, what seems like now ancient history, my first trip to France, I was warned. I was warned,
That the guys were going to hit on you.
You just, watch out. You just have to have. I didn't ever take classes in self-defense, but I should have. It was. But you know what?
But was that your experience?
No, it wasn't my experience.
Okay.
I mean, it was, but it was in a far more subtle way. Let's put it that way.
Okay. Yes, subtle. Yes,
subtle.
Yes, but not like
No.
overt. Like, oh, well, you don't have a boyfriend in France.
Right.
So call me.
Right.
Uh-huh.
Right.
No way. Then she, that made me laugh. She shows up the first day at the office with a shirt that has an Eiffel Tower print on it.
That's right. Well, her clothing is rather outrageous in general.
Well, the thing is, she dresses like she dresses like what Americans think French people dress like. So she has this idea of the chic French person would pick this.
And she's also, interestingly, very overdressed, if you think about it. I mean, one of the first things I remarked myself, not recently, but even the first time I was really in a situation of working in France, was that French women take very good care of themselves, but they don't overdress.
Right.
And she is overdressed.
Right. You know exactly what you need,
Right.
the level of dress
Right.
you need for the situation.
Right.
Yeah, and you don't show up as a...
You don't flash.
Yeah.
That's the difference, I mean,
Yeah.
flashy is just not very French.
Well, never mind that, of course, being young and we have no reason to believe that she's paid handsomely for this job.
Right.
Would she have the means to buy these expensive things? I don't know.
Maybe.
Being Phil Collins' daughter, she probably can, but
As the person in the story, I don't know.
yeah.
Right. Let's talk about the language thing. How's that?
Yes.
But that is really, it is one of my big bugaboos about not just her, but I've had a few other experiences like that where it is a fact. I think it's changing a little bit, but it is a fact that lots of times Americans, and let's just say Americans because I really can't speak for other people from Australia and places like that, but Americans really will assume that everywhere they go, people will speak English and understand them, and that they don't have to start off by making an effort to speak some French. And it's just the most arrogant attitude in the world. Mm-hmm. And what's interesting is that it is true that now the younger generation, everyone does speak a little English if they've gone to study, if their studies have taken them beyond, basic high school kind of thing. Because English is required in almost every field that you study in now. But there's just something so amazing about the idea that you can walk into a business situation and just assume that you can prattle off in English and that everybody is going to understand what you say.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. And that's not true. And that's not something French people ever would assume, that wherever we go, people are going to know French.
No.
We know that.
No.
We know that's not the case.
It's true. It's just not the case.
From experience, yeah. And it's funny when the lady at the bakery, the boulangère, she fixes her French right away, because she says le when she's supposed to say la, whatever. I can't remember what the mistake was. But I don't think that would ever happen.
Yes, it would.
Would it?
Oh, yes, it would.
Oh, yeah.
I've had this happen to me many times.
Oh, yeah? People you've never met before?
Yep.
They just correct your French.
They correct your French.
Huh.
And that, interestingly
well, they've never corrected my French, thank God.
Well, you're French, Annie. But you know what? In the show, she's very friendly. I mean, she's actually turns out to be a nice, friendly with her, the boulangère.
Yeah.
Whereas my experiences have been absolutely not like that at all. It's simply correcting mistakes. It's like I have asked people who have said that to me, who have done that to me, and they assume it's their duty to correct me. And I remember once telling somebody, actually, I think it's rude. And they could not believe that I would think that was rude. So, yes, it does happen.
It happens,
It does happen.
Wow, that's terrible.
Yeah.
I'm sorry.
It's just, the counter experience is going to Italy, where if you make a mistake, guess what they do? They laugh. They laugh,
Well, that's good, though.
That's good,
That's good, yeah.
Like, they don't just go like... Not like that.
Well, when I showed up in America, my first few months, the very first time I went to America, I hadn't lived in any English-speaking country yet. And so my English was really minimal. That was in 1983. And so I don't remember trying to speak with anybody who didn't know French. Mm-hmm. But the time after that, I had in the meantime lived in England for, maybe 2 years or something. And so I spoke English with a very British English accent, right? First time my husband met me, he thought I was English. Mm. But even with that accent, I had people on the phone not correct me, but like pretend they didn't understand me. Uh-huh. And it really bugged me.
Yep.
It really annoyed me because I was like, surely you know what that means.
Right.
In the back of my mind, Anyway, I guess it can happen in any language.
And I think that in the example of when she goes into the bakery, it's not nasty. It's just like saying, no, this is how you say it, this kind of thing.
Yeah.
So I think it's also the attitude of somebody who does that with you.
Yeah. But of course, when she gets into the office, bonjour. She says it badly, yeah, bonjour. Yeah. When she gets to the office, first of all, they haven't been warned that there was a switch in who was coming, which is unlikely. I mean, come on. They would have been told that. But one of the first things that her new boss says, the woman boss, I can't remember what her name was. Oh, Sylvie. Sylvie is her name. She says, don't bother to learn French. Like, you're so bad at it. The few words you've tried, you're so bad at it, don't even bother. And French people, that's rude?
Sometimes.
Huh.
Yeah, but I think it's also, I think that was in specifically for two reasons. One, because if you start from scratch, it takes a long time to really learn the language. It really does.
Of course, yes.
And also, I think it was a way of telling her, you're not going to stay here very long.
Oh,
and
that's true.
It was a way of saying, I'm getting rid of you as fast as as quickly as I can.
Yeah. And then very quickly, their first meeting, they discuss how all Americans are fat and how they all eat terrible. And, and of course, they're doing that while smoking in the office.
Right. Which, of course, now is a no-no and has been for a number of years already.
For a long time.
It's been
There's no way.
Almost 20 years now that, it's not a possibility.
Maybe not 20.
Well, they started with indoor, outdoor, I think it was in 2002 or something like that.
Oh, maybe, not far. Yeah.
But I have to say, I've actually had arguments with some students who insist that it is absolutely a fact that there is not any American who is not fat. And I'll ask them,
you're American, you're not fat.
Have you been to the United States? No. They all are fat and they all eat only at McDonald's. And I have actually a couple of times gotten angry. You're not supposed to get angry when you're a teacher. And I was going, okay, this is absurd. This is not really. How are you so sure of these things when you've never been to the country? It's very strange.
Yeah.
But this is it's like belief systems. This is it.
Right. But and it's a reality that there are plenty of Americans who are not fat, and there are plenty of French people who are fat.
Yes.
Come on, we're people.
Right.
Don't. Yeah.
And not everybody wears a size 4.
Yeah. No. Mm-hmm.
Not even on my hand can I wear a size 4.
And you're not bloody big,
No, I'm normal. I'm like medium, whatever.
Yeah. Anyway, so there's a lot of smoking innuendo in the show. Like French people, there's a lot of things like, oh, well, you don't eat. You should have a cigarette instead of eating. You know, that's how you stay skinny somehow. And there are some French people who believe that.
Right.
It's ridiculous. But there are some people who, I mean, what it is they think that if they stop smoking, if they quit smoking, there's been so many stories in the press.
That you'll eat more.
That when you stop smoking and you gain 5 kilos.
Right.
And so everybody believes it. That, you know, but 5 kilos is hardly, you know, it's not like it's 2.5 pounds. No, it's 10 pounds.
It's 12.
Okay, 12.
12. However, I'm very aware of kilos. But it is also true that it dates the series, even though the series is from this year. Because Annie, right now, how many people do you know who smoke?
Not many.
Neither do I. And a lot of them used to smoke. But
yes, I know many who used to smoke.
And so it's very interesting to me that they really use that as a trope in the show a lot, because I don't know very many people who smoke anymore.
That's probably true. Yeah. I mean, it's not changing as fast as it should, but it is changing, even in France.
And the people I know who smoke tend to be much more conscious of whether or not they're bothering somebody in their smoking. So I find it very dated in the show that they do that.
That's true. That's a good point.
It really is.
Yeah, just this morning I was at the pharmacy and there was this woman next to me who was getting helped, and I was waiting for my pills to arrive, and she had a long discussion about the smoking cessation patches or whatever, you know, what strength she should use at first and then next. And, you know, I know nothing about this because I've never smoked in my life. So I've never had to try and stop smoking.
Right.
But it was very interesting. And, you know, the pharmacist was very careful to explain the phases and the stages and this and that. It was interesting. Anyway, French people are trying to stop smoking.
Yes, they are. They really are.
And we're probably behind America in that regard. You know, that's the truth.
But it's better than in some other countries in Europe at this point.
Yeah. One thing that amused me is one of the dialogues. Somebody says, the Sylvie lady, she says, "Without pleasure, what are we? German?"
Well, I mean, you know, some of the jokes in the show are actually jokes that French people would understand better than Americans. Yeah. Really, you know.
Yeah, this is something French people would say.
It is
That's true.
That somebody French would say, you know. Really.
Then Luc, the funky looking one with the white hair.
Yeah.
He says, "Why are you shouting?"
Right. Well,
during their first meeting, I don't know that she was shouting.
She was speaking very loudly.
Well, she was speaking.
And she was typically American.
But it's true that by now with masks, we're having to speak louder or we can't be heard. So at the pharmacy this morning, again, I was there with my mask. There's a plexiglass thing, and the lady on the other side couldn't quite hear me. So I had to just talk a little louder.
Right.
But at the pharmacy, normally you don't like yell things out.
No.
You know, you're careful it's private. Of course, you have somebody a meter or two away from you who's also dealing with a different pharmacist, but you try to keep it kind of quiet.
I mean, that's the circumstance now. But it is a fact that Americans speak very loudly. They really do. It's a general, it's a tendency that Americans have to speak very, very loudly. I mean, this is, you know, even in linguistic studies, they'll talk about it. It's very strange. I don't know exactly why, but it is like that. And so, but the way she does it in her presentation is, it's like speaking loudly is more dominating somehow. You know, it's like you're really in control.
And when you're raised in France, people will let you know the minute you start as a kid talking too loudly.
Yes, right.
They'll let you know.
That's right.
It's not okay.
It's not okay.
Yeah.
Not at all.
Yeah. So, and it's true that Emily comes off really arrogant in her first meeting in this business setting because she's going to teach them how you do social media. Right. You know, we invented it.
Right, exactly. Right.
Which you did. Yes, it's true. But, I mean, social media needs to be, you need to know who you're talking to or you can't do it.
Especially if you're talking to a group of people who are older. They're not going to enjoy being told we are the ones who know how to do everything.
Yeah,
they've been around longer.
Yeah. So the boss at some point says, "Oh, I wonder how long she's going to last."
Right.
Which still, I think that's going to be a trope throughout the thing.
exactly.
Is how long is she? I mean, I don't know. I haven't seen it, but and then one thing that made me laugh. She's standing there. I think she's on the Pont des Arts or something, and she says, "The whole city is like Ratatouille."
Yeah. Right. Well, that was one of the things I saw that was mentioned in several of the articles. It's like, really? The only three references she has is Normandy is Saving Sergeant Ryan.
Private Ryan.
Private Ryan. And Paris is Ratatouille. Okay, here we go.
One thing that made me laugh, because it's so true, is she goes back into her building and the lights don't come on.
Yeah.
And even when she finds the thing eventually to turn on the lights, then they turn off.
Oh, I hate it.
In the middle. And this happens all the time.
It terrifies me.
It happens all the time. But now we all have phones with flashlights, so it's not such a big deal.
Right.
But this used to be a big thing. Is in France, you were like, "Oh, I'm going to a new place." Like my eyes would look for the
button.
Yeah, the button to turn on the.
Well, I'm always terrified I'm going to kill myself, because if I'm going downstairs and all of a sudden the lights go off, I grab the banister because I'm thinking, what's going to happen next? Is the light going to go off? It's awful,
Yeah. One more stereotype is French people don't go to work until 10:30 in the morning.
Wow. That, of course they're a PR company.
Yeah,
basically.
PR. Yeah.
I mean, whatever. But obviously that is marketing, right?
Yeah.
I mean, that's obviously people are at work at 8:30 in the morning.
Yeah,
I mean, it depends on what you do.
Yeah, it
stores
depends.
Open at 10.
Yeah.
Whatever.
Yeah, it depends on. Yeah,
it depends on your job.
Like a closed store will open at 10, but of course then they're open a lot on every Saturday and some of them Sunday too.
And not only that,
So,
but usually the people get there earlier to prepare before the stores open.
Yeah. So the French people are lazy.
They're lazy.
Yes, it's a bit. Okay. I didn't like that so much. And then there's the whole thing about, do you want to have lunch? No, I'll have a cigarette. Nobody wants to have lunch with her the first day, which is possible.
Yes.
It's even happened to me. So that is when you first arrive somewhere to work, you have to understand that there might be a clique. There might be something, people who are used to going to lunch together. And I think if you ask them, can I join you? They will let you in. These people were not letting her in because she asked. And so, but yeah, it is.
I mean, I think it also depends on the environment, but it is true that it can be very cliquey, and people don't necessarily immediately want to include you.
Yeah.
It depends on the environment, I think, a lot.
Yeah, you need to earn it. But I think it's getting easier, because I was a little worried about when my daughter did her internship this summer, because I thought, they're going to be nice to her. As a mom, moms worry about these things. People were super nice to her. She got invited right away to go and join the group and whatever. So I think it depends on the environment.
Yeah, I really do.
Some places, in this sort of, who knows?
It's a kind of snobby environment where she is.
Yeah. Then she goes to lunch on the Palais Royal, le Jardin du Palais Royal, which I knew immediately because the benches have things written on them.
Yep.
That's Palais Royal. And that's where she meets Mindy, who is a lovely actress, I'm sure, but she dresses really slutty.
Well, yeah.
A lot of the women do. A lot of women.
And that, interestingly enough, is something you do not see.
It's really rare.
It's really rare. However, what's really interesting, I don't know if you, Annie, are aware of the controversy from last week that came about because one of the high schools, and now I'm not sure, I don't remember where, it was a public high school, a student was told to go home because she was wearing
short shorts.
She was wearing short shorts and a
with
cut-off
tights.
top. No, she was wearing a top that showed her midriff, and it was a lot of exposure, and it really set off a huge controversy.
Yes, I did see something about that. And I didn't read it, but I saw there was something.
It's very interesting to me because I can understand both points of view. That is. Except it depends on what the arguments are. The argument, which of course is why the feminists were really up in arms about the whole thing, was the old idea, which is really the cliche for centuries, that women should not try to be seductive because men don't know how to control themselves.
Right.
You know. But it made me think of the fact that most of the time in France, except maybe in summertime, you would not think of French women as being women who dressed like that.
No.
Really not.
I was actually surprised when I first went to England. On a Friday night, you'd walk by the pub and there would be all these women. And back then I didn't drink anything. And I never went to a pub or anything like that. And all these women would be standing outside the pub dressed like, it was cold sometimes. And they were dressed really, really slutty to me. And so to me, that was an English thing, not a French thing. In France, I went out to things, social things with friends or whatever, but nobody dressed like that.
Nobody dressed like that,
Not just me. It was nobody dressed like that.
Right.
So yeah, it's that... that is a misconception about France.
However, I have to say that she dresses like that in the first scene where they meet, but not after that. She doesn't dress like that in the other
maybe I
scenes.
didn't pay attention.
And she's extremely well dressed. Well, she does say that she comes from a rich family anyway.
That's true.
I mean, that's
true.
You know, but
yeah, and she does say something. She says French people are mean to your face.
Yeah,
which is maybe
it can be just a different style. That's all.
Yeah. Also, another thing is, I think it's unlikely that there would be somebody who's afraid of English who works in social media.
Oh, the other woman.
Yeah, the woman
Right.
who just runs off
Right.
from the meeting because
Exactly.
she can't speak English. And okay, that's a flight. They played it like a flight reflex almost.
Exactly.
Like she was afraid of a lion.
Well, it's also just not realistic. If that's the kind of company it is, she was afraid of the English, but she was also afraid of all of the latest high tech. And that doesn't seem realistic at all.
Yeah.
You know? I mean,
Yeah.
not in the field like that.
Now, another thing that is not realistic at all is they call her la plouc to her face.
Right.
Now, plouc is it's a kiddie insult.
But it's calling someone a peasant, basically.
Yes, that's what it means.
Which
Yeah,
certainly
it's a
is not
peasant.
what she is. You know,
No, at all, not a bit. And it's poorly chosen as an insult. We have a lot of insults in French. We are we have very intricate levels of insulting language, and they should have done better than la plouc. That is just ridiculous.
It's a ridiculous
they're
choice.
not five.
No.
They're not going to use that word.
No.
and then she knows how to spell it.
And she knows how to spell it.
To look it up. Miracle of miracles.
Right.
She can't speak French, but she knows how to spell plouc.
Exactly.
And then I think it's Luc says Americans live to work, but French people work to live, which is probably true. French people, I think, once we have what we need, when we have our basic needs met, I don't meet a lot of French people who just say, I want to make $10 million by the time I'm 30.
No.
You know,
I think
it can happen, but it's unusual.
I think it's really true also in the sense that life is too short to not take time out to enjoy yourself. And that, for instance, you know, I have known many people who have said there are jobs I would not take because it didn't give me at least so many weeks of vacation.
Yeah.
And I would always be surprised that was more important than whether the job was prestigious or not, or whether it really,
or whether it paid well
exactly.
or not. Yeah,
I really do think that is true.
Yeah. French people worry a lot about quality of life over money.
Yep.
You know, almost every time they'll pick quality of life.
Right.
Then she's very early to work, and don't be early is good advice.
Which is strange.
Yeah, you don't want to be early or late. For a business meeting, you want to be just on time.
On time.
So what you need to do is, if you got there early because you were worried about traffic or whatever, just don't be in front of the door the whole time, you know. Go somewhere else for a bit and then time it right to be right on time. That's it, you know.
I can't imagine that it's good to be late, though.
No. Late
really
is
not.
bad too. But you don't want to be too eager beaver.
Right.
Because if you're eager beaver, then you come across as just the unpleasant person who wants to take over the world.
It's strange, though, isn't it?
Yeah.
I mean, it's really the opposite of the way you're supposed to be in the States. You're supposed to show that you're an eager beaver. You're supposed to show that you're willing to put in the extra time, that you're willing to do all this extra stuff. Because
No,
you
not
know,
here. Not here.
No.
No, you're supposed to be competent and professional, but not eager beaver.
No.
That will not fly.
No.
Don't do it. Of course, the boyfriend doesn't know about the time difference, which can happen. That sounded a little bizarre. But
years ago, when it was one of my sisters who was living in France and I was still back in California, she probably did that to me 3 times. You know, it's like, hi.
Yeah.
Did you realize what time it is you're calling me? But, you know.
Yeah, it happens. It can happen. Okay, one other scene that was very funny is she plugs in the vibrator and it blows up the whole electricity for the for the building. That was amusing.
It was amusing, but I mean, I guess those are the kinds of things that annoy me because it's like, how stupid was she? Or did she just leave 24 hours after they told her she had to go to Paris? That she didn't learn anything about what she needed to do, not do, take, not take. I mean, really.
Plus, I have been told that these things run on batteries anyway. So,
that's another whole subject. I really don't know, to be honest.
You don't plug them into the wall.
But,
And Americans, when they first arrive, their problem is their plugs don't plug in the wall.
They don't plug in the wall.
They don't work. You need to have adapters and whatever. Anyway, it's Oh, the other thing is she steps on poop coming outside of her chic apartment.
Yes.
Yeah, no.
Yeah.
Not in a chic neighborhood.
Now.
Yeah.
This
10
is the
years ago,
difference.
different.
Yes.
Today, no.
Absolutely. What's happened is that chic neighborhoods have basically cleaned up, but it is still something that can happen, unfortunately.
Yeah. The business name that she's going to work with, Deleur or whatever, the boss, Sylvie, makes her repeat it.
Right.
And she can't ever get it right. I'm sure that the actress can speak some French.
Would be interesting to know.
Yeah, I don't know. But, and then the boss explains to her that how she shouldn't be open. It's good to be closed. It's good to be secretive. It's good to be, I guess, mystery, sophisticated.
Right.
Don't be an open book.
Don't put it all out there.
Right.
Basically.
And that is actually a bit of a French thing in some areas. Don't be an open book.
Well, I think that there's also, it can be taken both from the professional point of view and also from just a point of view of being a woman, in that, maybe for men too, but it's like, don't put it all out there already. Save it to be a little bit mysterious.
Right.
It's much more interesting that way.
Don't tell them your whole life in 5 seconds.
Right.
That's not good.
Definitely not good.
Don't do it.
Don't do it. Yeah.
Antoine Lambert, when she meets him at first, he came across as the sleaze of the universe.
Right.
I have met so many guys like that. I would have had to take a Prozac to even talk to him. So, it's very interesting how, but he's the cat's meow, obviously. Right. He's the male dominant guy. So it's very interesting because the way French people see the dominant alpha male and the way Americans see the alpha male are completely different.
Very different.
Very different. In France, the alpha male is rich, very self-assured, and has a lot of recognition professionally. So it's somebody who's going to be running a company or, some like in this case, he's a nez, so he's like the perfume maker, whatever. That's the alpha male. He dresses carefully, very tight-fitting clothes, In America, the alpha male puts on a cowboy hat and talks loudly and takes charge of the cows.
I've actually heard American men say that they think that French men are all feminine because they take too good care of themselves.
Yeah, because they dress carefully and all that.
They dress carefully and their appearance is important.
Yeah. Let's see. Somebody at the party tells her, I don't know if it was at the party, but somebody tells her, you need to find a French boyfriend so you can learn French.
On the pillow.
Yes, the pillow French.
It's him. He's the guy that does that.
Oh, he's the one who says that. Okay, I forgot. And then, of course, we can tell right away that the boss is jealous. And then a few minutes later, we learn that she's sleeping with sleazy guys. So, So there's the whole thing about how French women sleep with their clients.
Or who are mistresses. It's about being mistresses.
Yeah, being mistresses. Yeah. So it's a long-term relationship, but on the sly kind of thing. Whereas American women don't do that. I have a bit of a hard time believing that American women don't ever sleep with their bosses to get ahead.
My attitude about that is, from what I know of different people's lives, is that people do it everywhere. Maybe not as much in the States as they do here. It's just simply not something that is accepted, so people don't admit it. People don't talk about it.
Yeah.
Whereas in France and in Italy, and I know this from some friends who are from Italy, it is actually, sometimes people will actually admit it. They just admit it, and it's, it depends on the way you were brought up, because not everybody accepts it, not everybody likes it, but it certainly is something that is discussed and is kind of part of, like if you ask people, they'll say, well, it's just the way things are. This is a kind of French attitude that you find, whereas in the States mostly, if it happens, usually it ends in a divorce.
That's true.
Whereas here, it doesn't.
I do know a lot of French women who have had husbands who cheated on them, and they didn't get a divorce.
And they didn't get a divorce.
So,
right?
It's like, well,
there's a very prevalent attitude among women of a certain age. I don't know if it's true anymore for the real young'uns, that men are like that, period. Men are like that. Yeah. So, okay.
So, what are you going to give up your nice house?
Right, exactly.
Your nice standard of living just because you slept with somebody?
Right.
No.
But it is also a real stereotype. It's a real French stereotype.
Yeah, yeah.
And it's an Italian stereotype as well.
Yeah. And also that, French people don't really care what happens. Like, we don't really care about our politicians. No. Private life. Like,
you can't lose a mandate because they find out you're sleeping with somebody unless there's something really awful about the situation.
No, but there was the guy recently who was running for mayor in Paris, and he was found sexting, like sending pictures of his penis to somebody who set him up, pretty much.
Right. But was it somebody who was she underage or something?
No, but anyway,
it was just indiscreet.
It was extremely indiscreet,
right.
And he quit the race.
Right,
he quit the race.
Well, I think that now
so it can happen in France too, that people are shamed for doing things that are.
I think it's now that we have social media, it's very different. Anyway.
Yeah.
It really is,
But I think, I wouldn't have voted for him because that is just dumb. Like, don't be dumb.
Well, that's the whole point. It's a question of whether you have a discernment or not.
Yeah. Really. I would like to elect people who are not stupid. That would be good.
Yes. Hopeful.
Yeah. And then we have the scene where the steak is too rare and she tries to send it back, and out comes Thierry. He's pretty gorgeous, I have to say. And Thierry, he's a chef in a kitchen, in a cafe, and yet he can afford that nice restaurant, nice apartment.
Yes.
That does not happen, okay?
No.
And also chefs at restaurants, most of the time in the back of the kitchen, you have immigrants working the kitchen.
Oh, yeah, but he's the chef.
He's the chef.
He's the chef.
Yeah.
So. But the whole thing about the meat, I have had several episodes in my life in France of dealing with that whole exact situation of a piece of beef that is too raw and too rare. At one time, it was not in a restaurant. It was at someone's house.
And they wouldn't cook it more.
They would not cook it anymore.
That is just being an asshole.
Right. And once I was with a friend who was visiting. I was already living in France, and he actually came to visit, and we were in a restaurant. And I don't know if it changed later in his life because this was a while ago. But he asked to have, it was dinner. It wasn't lunchtime. It's very interesting because there is certainly a difference in people's minds between the two. But we were sitting in a restaurant in the Latin Quarter, and he asked to have a huge café au lait with his main dish, and they refused.
Because you don't drink café au lait with your main meal. It's true, you don't.
It's true, you don't.
But see, that's one of the things that I think has made it so that France has kept its traditional its food traditions, is because French people have very strong ideas of what you do eat and what you don't eat and what time you eat and what time you don't eat. And that's one of the reasons why most French people are slimmer than on average than Americans, is because they don't snack. Why don't they snack? It's not because they wouldn't like it. It's just that it has been drilled into their heads from childhood that you do not do that. That is just a no-no. And I have seen women correct their children in ways that I thought was just too much. And it was over them trying to eat some chips or something.
That's true. And it is a fact that French people eat larger amounts per meal than Americans, but they do not snack in between meals.
Right.
However, I've lived in France now for a long, long time. I think French service in restaurants is abominable.
Yeah, you would prefer American service?
I think, American service gets on my nerves because, hi, my name's Doris. How are you today? Can I tell you my life story? No, I don't want that either. But I think that there is, I think it has changed a little bit. But the idea that the customer is never right, I've encountered that too many times.
Yeah, it's annoying. Yes.
It's not like that, but you're the one paying, for Christ's sake. You know, I mean, if you really don't want something, why should you be forced to have it just because the chef or the owner of the restaurant says, "I'm sorry, that's the way it is here." You know,
right. But it's true that, and I think it's even worse in Italy, because in Italy it gets to the point where they won't even put salt on the table. It's insulting because the cook is supposed to know how much salt to put in.
Oh.
Yeah. So in France, it's not quite to that point.
No.
But in France, they will sometimes, some people will insist, no, I know how your steak is supposed to be cooked. It's correct. So go away.
And then the idea that you can, say, well, I'd like to have this with this. And they say, no, you can't. It's like, I remember looking at the guy thinking, I was embarrassed. I wasn't sure what I was supposed to say. I don't know what I said, to be honest. It was a long time ago. But it was like my friend looked at me and went, what the hell is this? And I thought, I was embarrassed because I was trying to be very French. And I said, well, you don't have a coffee with your milk with the meal. You wait till afterwards, It's like,
yeah.
It's like, oh my God, I really don't want to be here right now.
But on the other hand, there is also this French thing that is do what you want and be what you want. That some of us espouse. I am someone like that. I have always been like that. I have gone against the grain my whole life. I don't wear makeup. I don't wear jewelry. I stopped decades ago because at one point I was like, you know what? I cannot compete with these women. I cannot. It's not going to happen. So I have to do my own thing.
You have to do your own thing.
So I became me.
You became you.
Right.
You became Annie. But I think that's one of the reasons why it was possible for you to adapt to living in the States, because you are able to pick and choose from both cultures.
Right. And I know what I want.
And you know what you want.
I'm totally fine walking into a circumstance where I know I'm not as rich as these people and whatever, but I can hold my own. It's okay. I'm not embarrassed that I'm not dressed as well or that I'm not bejeweled well enough, I don't care,
Bejeweled.
So it's okay. It's also very French to do what you want. And there are a lot of women around my village anyway that are the same as me. They never, they don't care about all this stuff. But of course, they happen to be the walkers and the people who walk their dogs and whatever. Right. So maybe I'm just seeing a lot of them because it's, but even when I go to Paris plenty. And I don't feel out of place.
No,
that's my thing.
But I think things have changed an awful lot in the last 25, 30 years.
Yeah.
I really do. And I think that now you see people dressed more casually.
Yeah.
You see lots of different kinds of styles where you didn't really, the first few times I came to Paris, it was really not like that.
Yeah.
I mean, I remember years and years ago, the first time being in Paris in the summertime, seeing old women, unfortunately, I think I'm now in that category, wearing high heels, no stockings, and these skinny, tight dresses. And I thought, this is vulgar. It really is. I mean, why try and pretend you're a young person? You're not anymore.
Yeah.
I mean, you don't see it as much anymore.
No.
You really don't.
Yeah. It's very interesting to me that towards the end of the second show, she says she makes friends with the bakery lady.
Yeah.
And they're doing yet another selfie with the puckered mouth, whatever that is. And which I've never done in my life. And then there's a little sign that comes up for just a second, and it says, bonjour goes a long way. That is true.
That's true.
Bonjour goes a long way. So someday she decided to say bonjour when she walked in, and then now she's friends with
her.
So it's kind of subtle, but that's what it means.
Right.
And I thought that was well done. So it's not like this show is totally ignoramus. Somebody knows what they're talking about.
Right. I think it has to do more with the cultural stereotypes of the two countries.
Yeah.
And then again, the whole question of, obviously, this is the kind of show, okay, so there's going to be romance and there's going to be some pretty-looking people, but it's at a level of unreality, except for one thing. And I thought about this the other day when I left your house when we were watching the episodes together. And it made me think about this. Now, Lily Collins is obviously very young and still at the age where when you look at her, even with the close-ups on television, you have no imperfections on her face.
No, she's definitely
like
very beautiful.
She's very beautiful and whatever.
And a good actress. I think she's good at acting.
The actors who are French, and I'm not talking, I mean, like the two women in the office who are a bit older, the two men. One of the very first things that happened years and years ago when I was studying French and then would go to see French movies, one of the things I loved immediately was that French actors are not perfect looking. They don't have perfect teeth. They don't have perfect skin.
There's one that he smiles and one of his back teeth is totally brown.
Right.
No.
They're crooked.
It wasn't on the TV. It was yesterday. I was watching French TV. You wouldn't believe this. I now have been watching some French TV.
Unbelievable.
And there was a journalist on. He smiled, and one of his teeth towards the back was just the wrong color. So he got all sorts of dental work done.
Right.
But one of the back teeth is still like cafe au lait brown.
Yeah, right. Yeah, and I think that it was one of the very first things that made me love French actresses together was that they can be beautiful, but in a real way, not a plastic lifted face way.
Yeah.
And I really enjoy that, and I really appreciate that. And that you see in the show, because the only person who looks perfect is her.
True.
The only one.
Some of the younger men that hit on her are also eye candy.
They're eye candy, but they're not
but they might
necessarily
not be as
shaven, and they're not this and that. It's like it really is a very, very big difference.
Yeah. She talks about when her boyfriend doesn't come to France. She says, but I could take a 3-hour lunch and nobody would miss me. That's not quite true, okay? We do work plenty in France. When people are at work, they're at work. They're not goofing off. It's true that it used to be people took long lunches.
But not 3 hours.
That's too much. She wears a midriff shirt to work. That would not be okay.
No, and you don't wear shorty shorts to work either.
No. Oh, the whole thing about why is le vagin masculine, and so both Carla Bruni, who's the wife of the previous president Sarkozy, and Brigitte Macron. So you see, Brigitte Macron is kind of her outline. It's not her.
It's not her. But the back of her blonde head.
Yeah, and she gets a text from Carly Bruni, which is the previous first lady, telling her about this product, and then she retweets it or whatever. Okay, that's totally out there, man.
It's out there, but
it's out there.
It's also true that. I've been away from the States for a long time, and now I know this is a series that's on Netflix. I'm actually surprised at how upfront some of the sexual stuff is, because I'm not used to seeing that on American television.
Right, because you don't watch that much American television.
I watch no American television, except if it's a good series that's bought by one of the French stations. That's the only American stuff I ever watch. I never watch anything American, and I haven't for 24 years.
Right.
But it is true that being that it's Netflix, which is private and cable, it's very different from what I think you would see on just a regular network show.
Right.
I mean, it's very, very out there in terms of stuff like that.
Right. But anyway, I think, to conclude this whole thing, I think it's entertaining. I think there's nothing wrong with sitting down in front of the TV and watch something completely unrealistic. After all, I really love Star Trek. So I can't give lessons to anybody about watching stuff that's unrealistic, because Star Trek is nothing but unrealistic.
Well, it's a different kind of unrealistic.
Yes. Yeah. But the thing is, when a show like this gets so popular, and this one clearly has become really, really popular. Very quickly, and and I think it has to do with the fact that we can't travel, and so it's just
It's escapism.
Pleasant. Yeah, it's escapism. It's very pleasant. It's well done, you know. Now, I wish many episodes ago, I had on the show somebody called Mike August, and his husband is John August, who wrote a bunch of shows. And he actually lived in France, and they're actually Francophiles, and they know an awful lot about France. And I wish John August would write something of the sort, because he would make it more subtle. The problem with Emily in Paris is that it's really not subtle.
No.
The stereotypes are huge.
Yes.
It's not even like it feels a little bit like it's nothing but a series of stereotypes, which can, to me, it gets annoying. I can't forget that part, or I would have to watch it with the sound down.
Right.
You know, not listen to the dialogue at all. Just enjoy the beautiful scenery of Paris and whatever.
But I guess it's also, I know it's supposed to be entertaining, and it's a little bit like a fairy tale, and I think it is in that line of the stories, you know, like you get Midnight in Paris and things with Audrey Hepburn and stuff like that.
Right.
But at the same time, there's a certain edge to the stereotypes that really annoys me. You know,
yeah.
And it really is, it's almost as though, why do we have to, wouldn't it have been more charming in a way to have it be the same story, but instead of playing on the mockery of the different things in the different cultures, to sort of like see how they can meet and mix together somehow,
right?
You know?
And maybe explain their point of views better.
Yeah, I mean,
rather than just snap, judgment.
Yeah. I mean,
but that maybe that wouldn't make for very good television. I don't know anything about writing television, so who am I
don't
to
know.
say?
I mean, obviously, sitcoms tend to be the kinds of show where there's always the people that people make fun of, you know,
right.
and that kind of thing.
But did you laugh watching this? Because it's supposed to be a comedy, but I didn't laugh. I might have chuckled once.
Well,
but
I think the reason I didn't laugh is because I was so surprised by the way they really work these stereotypes, you know.
Yeah.
And I think that's really the difference, you know. I mean,
right.
it's not totally true that I never have watched any American television. In fact, the little bit of American television, other than some good series I've watched, has been some sitcoms, and I think that there's a difference between playing on just these old stereotypes. It's like part of my reaction to it was, what's the point? You know, like what's the aside from having her have this adventure in Paris, you know?
I think that's the point. It's just.
But then again, they
showing how beautiful Paris
made
is.
the effort to choose real French actors to have some of the dialogue in French with subtitles, which means that there's a certain concern for veracity in it.
Yes, and the actors who speak French actually speak French.
They really do speak French.
They're good French. You know, they're French speakers.
They're French actors.
Whereas years ago, it was never that case.
It was never like
You'd
that.
have this guy butcher a simple sentence, and it was like, yay.
So if they took that time, if they took the effort to do that, I'm sort of curious as to why they didn't try to make the whole question of stereotype more subtle. You know, I think it's really a bit hammer over the head kind of stuff, you know.
It is not subtle, I have to say.
Yeah, you know, I mean.
But other than that, I mean, I'm probably not going to keep watching it because I don't think I will be able to relax enough. And I really do enjoy Star Trek. And I don't watch that much TV. So, you know, I will just watch what I enjoy. Because at the end of the day, you know, but I am certain that it will bring a new generation into wanting to visit France.
Okay, so
wanting to visit Paris.
My last thought was this, because we were talking about this before we actually started recording, was the mentioning of the various places. Things are filmed in real places, and part of it are places that we both know, and the very, very beautiful parts of Paris.
Yeah.
I think it will bring back the yearning to go to Paris.
Right.
But I hope that when everybody can start coming back to Paris, that they're not going to go running around looking for Emily in Paris's Paris.
Oh, they will. They will.
You know,
know they will.
because it's just not the way it's shown in the show, even though these places really do exist, you know?
Yeah. Well, like Place de l'Estrapade is in the Latin Quarter.
Latin Quarter.
And I started writing a tour of the Latin Quarter. This will be my tour number 5 once it's finally released. And I don't remember if I had included that plaza or not. Mm-hmm. Honestly, because I haven't looked at it, but I will now.
Now you will. Yeah.
I will find something interesting to say about it because it's eye candy. It's pretty,
right?
And it might be the only thing I say is look around. It's really pretty,
right.
And maybe there's this cafe over here or whatever. Right. You know, I'll find something historical. There's probably something historical I can say about it in the tour. But you know, I places like that people want to visit, and the cafe. With the red awning, I can't remember what it's called, but there's going to be bazillion people taking their photo in front of that cafe. You know, but it's okay. It's human nature. Like, you know, I always remember the first time I saw a Hollywood celebrity as a young kid. I was 18 years old, 1983. I was visiting the U.S. for the first time, and we were walking across a casino in Las Vegas. And since I was only 18, I wasn't supposed to stop. And I was told, don't stop. You just walk. We're walking across. And I see Kojak. Tony Savalas, what is his name?
Terry.
I didn't even know his name. I had been watching Kojak as a French kid forever. And I had to have my photo taken with him and everything. So I understand being starstruck and all of that. It's normal. It's like, it's fun. You know, why not? At least we've been talking too long. 59 minutes almost.
We're giving them publicity.
No, but it's enjoyable. If you enjoy it, enjoy it. Okay. Paris is great.
It's Paris.
But don't think it's a documentary, because it ain't.
It ain't. It ain't. Really.
Thank you so much, Elyse.
You are quite welcome, Annie.
Au revoir.
Au revoir.
Again, I want to thank my patrons for supporting the show and giving back. Patrons get several exclusive rewards for doing so. You can see them at patreon.com/join us. Patreon. Join us, no spaces or dashes. And a thank you to all of you for supporting the show. Some of you have been doing it for years now. You are fantastic. And a shout out this week to new patrons, Wendy Wilcox Garrity and Dan Funch, who both signed up as yearly patrons, and because they did it that way, they saved 16%. And I mention that because the yearly savings will be reduced in half by the end of October 2020. And current patrons can also upgrade to the yearly plan and get a discount. Thank you so much for becoming patrons and making this podcast possible. I'll be working on a Patreon reward today, actually, the day I release the show, about how voting works in France. And it'll come out next week. Thank you to those of you who clicked on the Amazon ad at the bottom of joinusinfrance.com on Prime Day this week. When you do that, you help pay for podcast expenses, and it doesn't cost you a penny more. Keep it in mind for your holiday shopping too. It's simple as can be. Go to any page on joinusinfrance.com, scroll to the bottom of the page, click on the Amazon ad, and it'll take you to your local Amazon store where you can shop as you normally do. And it doesn't cost you anything more. Merci beaucoup. Because the episode went long, I'll keep my personal update short. I have written the 30 recipes I wanted to include in the cookbook. If you're one of the testers and haven't returned your review, please do it as fast as you can. I am on track for a first half of November release for the ebook, which makes me very happy. It's going to be great. I have worked very hard on this book, and I want to give you a realistic idea of what French people eat today. And that includes the classics that I know visitors love because I see you ordering them at restaurants all the time. I have ideas for more recipes that I will want to write about, but they'll have to go in a new version of the book, of the cookbook. I want to inspire you to try some of these classic French recipes and feel like they are doable, because they are. To be updated on the cookbook, on me, and on the podcast in general, sign up for the newsletter at joinusinfrance.com/newsletter. And a while back, I wrote and recorded an introduction for a new production of The Hunchback of Notre, read by B.J. Harrison, and it's been reviewed in the Audiophile magazine, where they say that Annie Sargent has a youthful voice. Woohoo! I fooled them. Something about me is youthful. That's great. You'll find a link to the book on the show notes because I think it's a wonderful recording of an amazing classic that I love. And episode 181 of Join Us in France was all about the history of the Hunchback of Notre Dame, if you haven't listened to it. COVID-19 is continuing to make us all miserable. Emmanuel Macron did a TV interview on Wednesday to explain why some cities and metro areas need to have a curfew between 9 p.m. and 6 a.m. Paris and Toulouse are included. So is Marseille, Lyon, Rouen, Saint-Étienne. I can't remember them all, but the list will change anyway. Public health experts have been keeping an eye on where clusters happen in France, and while we were all really worried about schools, only about 20 of our 60,000 schools have had to close as a result of a surge in COVID-19 infections. We haven't had many clusters started in the workplace or even on public transportation, even though most people are back to work and to school. That's probably because these are places where masks are mandated and people comply. Well, I'm sure some of them comply because they don't have a choice, but so be it. Grocery stores? Not a problem. Even the Paris metro hasn't been scary because people wear masks. The problem is when people take off their masks, and that happens when they go eat or drink together. It doesn't matter if you're meeting your sister or a perfect stranger. When you take off the mask to eat or drink, you're taking a risk. And when people go out drinking, they quickly lose their inhibitions. You've probably seen French people huddle around the outside of wine bars. That's where the clusters happen. It took 3 weeks for the numbers to come down when we had a much more severe lockdown from the middle of March until the middle of May. So this will take some time. Don't come to France in the winter of 2020. We are not ready for you. But you know, one French place where they're doing great is New Caledonia, La Nouvelle-Calédonie. Hardly any COVID-19 there. I know Australians can't leave the country for tourism yet, and I'm not sure about New Zealand, but that's a bit of France that's close to you where they're doing well, really well. I got my flu shot this week and it didn't even hurt. I'm so proud of myself. I'm really glad to have that done. And public service announcement, vote, Americans. Vote like your future depends on it, because it does. If you enjoy the show, introduce a friend to the podcast and show them how to listen. We're on all podcast apps, Spotify, Pandora, Amazon Music, Google, everywhere. Next week on the podcast, an episode about the secrets of the 5th arrondissement in Paris, that's the Latin Quarter, with Phil Goldsmith. You'll need to get your notebook out so you can jot them all down. Send questions or feedback to Annie@joinusinfrance.com. Thank you so much for listening. Stay well, and I hope you join me next time so we can look around France together. Au revoir. The Join Us in France Travel Podcast is written and produced by Annie Sargent and copyright 2020 by Addicted to France. It is released under a Creative Commons Attribution, Non-Commercial, No Derivatives license.